The official term is pareidolia. It's a psychological phenomenon where the mind responds to a stimulus, usually an image or a sound, by perceiving a familiar pattern where none exists, seeing faces in clouds or the man in the moon. It's the brain's desperate attempt to create order out of chaos. That's what I told myself over and over as I stared at the limestone lintel deep beneath the Temple of Seti I. Pareidolia. It had to be, because the alternative was impossible. The alternative meant that everything I had dedicated my life to, everything we thought we knew about the ancient world, was wrong. For 3,000 years, this carving had remained hidden in the suffocating dark. And now, under the unsteady flicker of my flashlight, it stared back at me, a perfect, undeniable, and utterly terrifying depiction of a modern attack helicopter. Our dig was headquartered in Abydos, one of the oldest cities of ancient Egypt. For a decade, I'd called this sun-scorched necropolis my home. I'm Dr. Eris Thorne, or I was. Egyptology wasn't just my profession, it was a crusade against the fantastic, a search for hard empirical truth buried beneath millennia of myth and sand. My team was the best in the world, a collection of grizzled cynics and brilliant young minds who, like me, believed history was written in pottery shards and carbon dating, not in the wild theories of late-night television shows. Our focus was the Temple of Seti I, a masterpiece of the New Kingdom, famous for its beautifully preserved reliefs and the mysterious Abydos king list. For years, we had meticulously mapped its known chambers, documenting every faded cartouche, every depiction of Osiris and Isis. The work was slow, patient, and predictable. The desert heat was a physical weight, the air thick with the dust of forgotten pharaohs. The locals we hired were quiet, respectful men who spoke of jinn and ancient curses with a casual sincerity that we academics found quaint. They warned us against disturbing the deep places, the parts of the temple that slept too soundly. We smiled, paid them their wages, and continued our search for facts, dismissing their folklore as the charming residue of an unscientific age. We were looking for history. We had no idea that history was also looking for us. The first anomaly was so subtle, so easily dismissed, that we almost overlooked it entirely. Deep within a recently unearthed chamber, a section of hieroglyphs seemed off. Dr. Lena Petrova, our lead epigrapher, spent days squinting at them, her brow furrowed in confusion. They depicted a scene of royal tribute, common enough, but some of the offerings were unlike anything we had ever catalogued. Smooth metallic ovals with strange protrusions, carried by figures whose robes seemed to shimmer with an unnatural light. Lena initially attributed it to artistic license, perhaps a regional stylistic variation. But then came the sarcophagus. Unearthed in a subsidiary chamber, it was unremarkable in its external decoration, but the inner lid, meticulously preserved, showed something that made Lena call me down personally. Instead of the usual journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, the deceased was shown ascending into the sky inside a vessel that could only be described as a disk, trailing what looked suspiciously like exhaust. Below it, tiny figures on the ground pointed upwards, not with reverence, but with a mixture of awe and fear. Still, we rationalized. Ancient imaginations were vivid, perhaps a dream, a vision of the afterlife. We published our findings cautiously, footnotes buried deep in academic journals, hinting at unusual iconography and unconventional symbolic representations. We were archaeologists, trained to seek logical explanations, to connect the dots within an established framework. The framework, however, was about to shatter. The whispers from our local crew grew louder. They spoke of a low humming sound at the peak of the moonless nights, a vibration that seemed to rise from the very bedrock of the desert. We dismissed it as the wind or the distant thrum of a generator, but the anomalies kept accumulating. Lena, poring over ancient schematics of the temple layout, found a discrepancy. A load-bearing wall in the western wing had no structural purpose. It was too thick, its placement illogical. It was a dead end. But on a hunch, a desperate need to explain the mounting strangeness, we brought in the ground-penetrating radar. And there it was. A void. A hidden corridor, deliberately sealed and plastered over, erased from the temple's own memory. Getting through the wall took 2 days of careful, nerve-wracking work. When the final stone was removed, a wave of cold, sterile air washed over us, so different from the musty warmth of the other chambers. Lena and I went in first, armed with high-lumen flashlights. The passage was narrow, leading down into a perfectly square chamber. The walls were smooth, the carvings impossibly precise, their edges as sharp as the day they were cut. And then we saw it. High above us, spanning the entire width of the chamber, was a single, massive stone lintel. My beam landed on it, and the breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the helicopter. To its right was a shape that was undeniably a submarine, sleek and powerful. Further along, an aircraft that looked like a futuristic fighter jet, and at the far end, a domed, saucer-shaped craft hovered above a series of smaller figures. My scientific mind screamed, hoax, a modern forgery, carved by some prankster. But the patina, the microscopic crystallization on the stone's surface, it was undisturbed. 3,000 years of undisturbed aging. Lena's light moved away from the vehicles, tracing a larger scene below them. It depicted Pharaoh Seti I, his profile unmistakable. But he wasn't offering praise to a god. He was standing beside a being, a tall, impossibly slender figure with an elongated skull and large, almond-shaped eyes. The pharaoh wasn't bowing. He was listening, his hands open in a gesture of reception. The being had one long-fingered hand resting on the pharaoh's shoulder, a gesture of quiet authority, of instruction. My heart hammered against my ribs. Lena made a small, choked sound and pointed her light at the being's wrist. Etched into the stone, with the same impossible precision as the rest of the relief, was a small rectangle. On its face were intricate lines and symbols, foreign yet familiar. It was a device, a piece of technology, something that looked, for all the world, like a smartwatch. We stood there for a lifetime, bathed in the beams of our flashlights, 2 insignificant specks of dust in the face of a truth that defied existence. Every textbook I'd ever read, every lecture I'd ever given, turned to ash in my mouth. This wasn't a carving of a myth. It was a logbook, a historical record of contact. The gods who walked the Nile and gave laws to the pharaohs weren't from the heavens. They were from the stars. They didn't bring divine wisdom. They brought technology. We were not their chosen people. We were their project. My hands trembled as I raised my digital camera, the instinct to document battling the primal urge to run. I had to show the world. This would change everything. I centered the impossible lintel in the frame, my finger hovering over the shutter. And then, in perfect chilling synchronicity, both of our powerful flashlights extinguished. The camera's LCD screen blinked once and died. We were plunged into a darkness so absolute, so profound, it felt like a physical substance. Silence. Then, the hum started. The same low-frequency vibration the workers had described, but we weren't hearing it with our ears. We were feeling it in our bones, a resonant thrum that emanated from the very stone around us. The chamber was waking up. I heard Lena let out a sharp, terrified gasp, followed by the sound of a desperate scramble in the dark. I opened my mouth to call her name, but only silence came out. What secrets did Seti I truly take to his grave? Were these carvings a record of the past, a celebration of the gods who visited them? Or were they a warning, a seal on a door that was never meant to be opened?